Mobilizing the faithful. Thousands of pastors recruited in an initiative to defund Planned Parenthood. The bleeding stops. U.S. stocks rebound after heavy losses jolt investors. Prisoner's gift. Inmates craft an elaborate chair to give to Pope Francis when he meets with some of them in Philadelphia. And back to school. NFL players team up with Catholic Charities to equip kids for the school year ahead. Those stories and more on EWTN News Nightly for Tuesday, August 25th, 2015. Good evening from Washington. Thanks for joining us. I'm Brian Patrick with your news now. An 8th undercover Planned Parenthood video is now out. Its release comes as Texas Senator Ted Cruz, who's running for president, calls on thousands of pastors to join a crusade against the abortion giant. Jason Calvi reports from the Capitol tonight.
Brian, I joined a conference call with Senator Cruz and pastors from around the country. He's asking for their help to strip Planned Parenthood of $500 million in federal taxpayer funding, rather. And this new video that came out today gives even more fuel to the fire.
Specific, I've seen really rampant problems with bacteria in certain clinics.
In the new video, undercover investigators meet with the CEO of STEM Express, a medical research company that received fetal organs from Planned Parenthood.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you had intact cases, which we've done a lot. So
the group behind the video says that statement could be evidence the babies were born alive. Today, Senator Cruz invites pastors to help defund Planned Parenthood.
Only our pastors, our faith leaders, our church leaders have enough influence to put a stop to this ongoing Holocaust.
Senator Cruz, the son of an evangelical pastor, is courting evangelical voters.
God bless the great state of South Carolina.
The country's first caucus is in Iowa next year on February 1st. According to polls in 2012, 57% of Iowa caucus voters were evangelical or born-again Christians. Michael Warren of the Weekly Standard says in a field of 17 Republican candidates, Cruz has a long-term plan to win the support of religious conservatives.
If Ted Cruz wants to win, he's got to sort of go all in with evangelicals. They're a voting bloc that always comes out if they're given a candidate and an issue to care about. And look, this is something, these Planned Parenthood videos have really, I think, cut through not just among Republican primary voters, but the broader culture.
Senator Cruz is asking pastors to preach a sermon on this issue. He says that these videos have the power to transform hearts and minds, even those that are pro-choice. Now, the Planned Parenthood, continues to deny the allegations. They say they're not profiting on these donations. They call them donations for medical research. Brian?
Jason Calvi at the Capitol. Thank you, Jason. Now, some of the other stories our EWTN News Nightly team has been covering in today's world. It certainly looked for a moment like stocks would finally gain some ground today on Wall Street, but during the final hour of trading today, the bottom fell out again. The Dow Jones Industrial Average closed down more than 200 points. Concerns over a slowdown in the Chinese economy have rattled global markets. China's central bank cut its key interest rate, trying to boost growth in the world's second largest economy. China's stock index tumbled for a fourth day, losing 7.6% of its value, closing at an 8-month low. Japanese stocks also fell, but other Asian markets rebounded somewhat after Monday's heavy global losses. European markets also bounced back some in early trading. One of 4 men who helped subdue a gunman aboard a French train credits teamwork in thwarting a potential massacre. Chris Norman, a British businessman, and 3 Americans teamed up to take the gunman down on the crowded train en route from Amsterdam to Paris on Friday.
I think we've got a pretty strong bond. I really spent more time with Alex and Anthony. We had a good couple of discussions. And, while they were making their statements to the police, there were no English-speaking people in the commissariat. So I was also doing the translation of what they actually experienced as well. And it was, I think, we got a very good bond together.
The four men were awarded France's highest recognition on Monday, the Legion of Honor. Meanwhile, plans are underway to give the American heroes a warm welcome home.
We're just so excited and so proud. Once the news spread that the folks involved in stopping a terrorist attack were from Sacramento, there was such an outpouring of support in our community. Everyone came up to me and said, we have to recognize them properly.
A parade will honor U.S. Airman Spencer Stone, National Guardsman Alex Colorados, and Anthony Sadler, who is a senior at Sacramento State University. They all grew up in the Sacramento area. Meanwhile, the suspect, who was heavily armed at the time, was taken down by police motorcade to the main court in Paris today. Ayoub El-Kazani is a 26-year-old native of Morocco. He appears to be linked to radical Islam. French authorities formally opened a terrorism investigation today. The Islamic State releases propaganda images of what appears to show militants blowing up an ancient temple in Syria. You see a large explosion at the 2,000-year-old temple in Palmyra. If this is authentic, it is the latest act of cultural vandalism by the terrorist group. The UN cultural watchdog, UNESCO, condemns the temple's destruction as a war crime. Well, it's back to tough reality for President Obama now that his vacation at Martha's Vineyard is over. As President Obama returns to the White House, plenty of work greets him on his arrival. Challenge 1, Wall Street. China's uncertain economy has led to volatility in the U.S. stock market. Monday alone, the Dow Jones Industrial Average lost more than 1,000 points in early trading before bouncing back somewhat. The administration argues that this blip in the markets is not a sign of a bigger problem.
The U.S. economy is far stronger now than it was in 2008.
China is not the only worry. Growing tension on the border of North and South Korea is a concern, even though the sides seem to have come to a deal. An issue for the U.S. with roughly 28,000 troops stationed in South Korea.
Nobody wants to see this come to blows on the Korean Peninsula.
But a key priority for the White House is the deal hatched with Iran. Despite the controversy, momentum could be on the administration's side, as a growing number of senators are backing the agreement, among them Senate Minority Leader Harry Reid. This all against the backdrop of the election to replace him. The president could soon be in an awkward position. A Democratic source says Vice President Joe Biden is leaning toward challenging former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton in the Democratic primary.
The president has indicated his view that the decision that he made to add Joe Biden to the ticket as his running mate was the smartest decision that he had ever made in politics.
The stage is set for a busy fall. And meanwhile, people from across the globe converge on Rimini, Italy. Hundreds of thousands gather for a conference presented by Communion and Liberation. That's a lay movement within the church. Communion and Liberation was founded by Father Luigi Giussani, a priest from Milan. The Rimini Meeting for the Friendship Amongst Peoples began 35 years ago. The group's website calls it the world's most attended cultural event. It offers talks, sporting events, shows, and exhibits. Emily Marsalik is joining us by Skype from Rimini. She is the curator of an exhibit called The Millennial Experience, I Am Exceptional. Emily, what is the message you are trying to portray to millennials and about them?
We are trying to tell millennials that although there is a lot of negative media attention about our generation, we are trying to say that don't run away from your problems. Stay engaged with reality so that you can really start to face the big questions that we all have, like where do I belong, what is my identity, and what could possibly make me happy?
Aren't those questions pretty much the same that those of us in all generations have been asking for centuries now?
Yes, I absolutely think so. And my experience here at the meeting of Rimini is that I've guided thousands of people from all over the world through the exhibit. And at the end, everyone tells me, well, these are my questions too. The millennial problem is actually the human problem.
So what do you feel are the answers to those questions?
The answers for me is not a Jesus sticker. The answers for me is that I stay completely engaged in reality, and that through asking these questions and through staying in front of my problems, I'm able to better face my life and in the end discover that what makes me happy is the same person who made Mary Magdalene or St. Peter or Zacchaeus happy.
And what is the reaction to the exhibit that you're getting?
It's been extremely overwhelming and super positive. The best thing that's happened to me is someone who lives in Lake Como, which is in Milan, invited me to come to their house at the end of the week because they were so struck by the exhibit, and in the sense that they really wanted to understand why an American would come all the way here to talk about their life with them.
Well, it sounds like you are making some definite progress with the folks visiting that exhibit. We want to thank you. Emily Marsalik joining us by Skype from Rimini, Italy, and the meeting of Rimini. We appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And she's been called the fastest nun in the West. The Italian-born nun who once challenged Billy the Kid faces her first test for sainthood. The Archdiocese of Santa Fe is presenting evidence today on why Sister Blandina Segali should be named a saint. Last year, the Archdiocese received permission from the Vatican to open her cause. Sister Blandina worked as a teacher and social worker in Ohio, Colorado, and New Mexico. She's best known for her encounters with Old West outlaws. Coming up, an American diplomat previews the issues Pope Francis will likely raise during his U.S. visit. And these Philadelphia inmates hope to see Francis sit in a gift they're making for him. Who is Jesus for me? Is he simply a name, an idea, a person from history? Or is he really someone who loves me, who gave his life for me and walks with me? Pope Francis this weekend challenging all of us to ask ourselves these questions. Thanks for joining us on this Tuesday evening. I'm Brian Patrick. Well, the U.S. ambassador to the Vatican says he expects Pope Francis will call on the U.S. to rediscover the values that made our nation great. Ambassador Ken Hackett recently visited with our Alan Holdren. He tells the AP this week he expects migration, income inequality, family, and the environment to be raised by Francis. Hackett thinks people will find the Pope's comments refreshing, even if they disagree with him. The Pope will be here a month from now. He visits Washington and New York before celebrating the closing Mass for the World Meeting of Families in Philadelphia. While in Philly, Francis will receive a beautifully handcrafted gift from an unlikely source. Inmates in Philadelphia are creating a chair to give to Pope Francis when he visits prisoners in Philly next month. Francis plans to meet with about 100 inmates and some of their relatives. 5 prisoners selected for their skills, reliability, and work ethic hand-carved this wooden chair. They see their work as an honor.
It's definitely an honor because not every day people can say that they made a chair for the Pope. And I can actually say I helped actually build the chair for the Pope.
Prison ministry is a focus of Francis's pontificate. The Philadelphia inmates meeting with the Pope have not yet been selected. Some who made the chair are likely to be included in that group.
I would like to see him sit in a chair. That's why we made it. I really don't know how it will be presented to him or what point will he actually sit in a chair. But the fact that I got the privilege to do the chair is good enough if I never see him sit in a chair. So I'm happy.
The chair stands nearly 6 feet tall, 2 feet wide, and 2 feet deep. The upholstery will be added by other inmates at a nearby correctional facility. And in the context of the World Meeting of Families, Pope Francis could address the recent U.S. Supreme Court ruling legally redefining marriage. Like John Paul II and Benedict XVI before him, Francis often refers to the complementarity of man and woman. He states that men and women are different by divine design. That's how God creates new life, through procreative union. Until recent years, that reality was ingrained here in American culture. Dr. Susan Hansen, an associate professor of history at the University of Dallas, Skyping with us from Dallas. And Dr. Hansen, let's talk about our second president, John Adams, and his wife, the First Lady Abigail. They really emphasized family connections. How did that help them through struggles, and what can we learn from that today?
I think that today there are a lot of trends that separate children from their biological family, that are kind of cutting them off from a knowledge even of who their mother and their father are, and certainly their extended family. And the Adams family shows us the importance of having that connection, of knowing who your ancestors were, what are the biological and psychological tendencies that you get from them, and knowing how they dealt with those strengths and weaknesses.
So other than the Bushes, the Adams, John Adams and John Quincy Adams, are the only father-son team that have been elected president. John Quincy's wife, Louisa, was described as a portrait of religious peace. Explain that.
So I think that Henry Adams, the grandson of John Quincy Adams, reflected a lot on the complementarity in the parenting of John and Abigail and John Quincy and Louisa. I think that he saw that while his grandfather and his great-grandfather and a lot of his uncles had a very great tendency towards fighting battles in public life, and so they had a tendency towards depression, frustration, a lot of difficulties with alcoholism, that from his grandmother and his great-grandmother, he always got the sense that there were goods beyond politics, that there were the bonds of affection in the family, and that there was that horizon of eternity that he should be looking to, and that gave Henry Adams a sense of mental poise and a kind of moral balance in his life that he otherwise wouldn't have had.
And Louisa, of course, was a strong defender of that child-parent bonding. Are we in danger of losing that today in our society as it is?
I think so. I think that this is one of the issues that we're facing with a lot of reproductive technologies and with a lot of sort of lack of respect for parental rights in education and parental rights in the law. And Louisa Catherine Adams really saw that when she left her children behind, when she was going on diplomatic voyages, that harmed her children. And late in life, as she looked back at her life, she realized that bond of gratitude between the child and the parent, or that bond of pity for your children and concern for them, was really the beginning of wisdom, and that we would lose our fundamental moral sense, and that the whole fabric of society could unravel if we destroyed the bond between parents and children.
What we can learn from history, all we need to do is listen and act upon it. We appreciate Dr. Susan Hansen joining us from the University of Dallas by Skype tonight. Dr. Hansen, thank you.
Thank you.
Up next, how is the mainstream media covering the undercover Planned Parenthood videos, or is it? And kids have what they need to start school thanks to Catholic Charities and some NFL players. Jesus said, "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You pay tithes of mint and dill and cumin and have neglected the weightier things of the law, judgment and mercy and fidelity." From today's Gospel according to St. Matthew. Thanks for joining us on this Tuesday evening, August 25th. I'm Brian Patrick. The 8th undercover Planned Parenthood video released today will likely be ignored by major media outlets. According to Media Research Center findings as of August 13th, the networks have devoted just over 1 minute to the videos using the audio from those videos. Only 6% of the network's total time covering the Planned Parenthood controversy included the actual footage. Katie Yoder is with the Media Research Center. Are you aware of any coverage of the release of that video that came out today, or any of the recent ones for that matter?
Sure. Well, the 3 broadcast networks actually have not covered the last 3 Center for Medical Progress videos, and it's unlikely that they'll cover the one that was released this morning. We'll find out tonight whether or not they include it in their evening news shows.
So the networks in their previous coverage have used very little audio where you could actually hear these conversations. In most cases, they didn't use the actual video. Is that significant to you?
Absolutely. It tells us that the media don't want to show the American public show abortion for what it really is, the tearing apart of little babies, because that will change the hearts and minds of the American public if they just show these videos. But the media, they have a long pro-abortion history, and they don't want to reveal that.
They could argue that it's too graphic, that they don't want to show that on the news. How would you respond?
Well, I would argue that they show a lot of other graphic sceneries. I mean, you can look at ISIS, you can look at the murders that they talk about that happen in different cities. They're not afraid to show graphic imagery except when it comes to abortion. And really, in this case, the broadcast networks are acting as a loyal PR firm to Planned Parenthood.
Tens of thousands of people in hundreds of cities across the nation this past weekend protested Planned Parenthood. Was there any major coverage of that by the networks?
No, there were more than 68,000 people out there protesting Planned Parenthood in these horrific videos. And the media couldn't find 1 second to spare. The 3 broadcast networks spent no time at all on this. And that's not to say they don't find time for other rallies. For example, they covered a Donald Trump rally in Alabama on Saturday, but for something like this, they couldn't find a second.
Maybe the crowds were bigger at the Trump rally.
No, in fact, they were far fewer. There were an estimated 18,000 to 30,000 versus almost 70,000 for these Planned Parenthood rallies.
When this story does get coverage, have you noticed any bias in the way it's presented?
Yes, down to the very language. The anchors refuse to use the word baby. Instead, they go for default language like fetal tissue. And this just isn't for the networks. This is for online media. This is for newspapers. They want to dehumanize these babies. But I can tell you that it's not quite working. These rallies are proof of that. Twitter and Facebook, Planned Parenthood trending on these social media items. The Planned Parenthood is getting attacked through the public in other ways other than the media, and the American public are finding ways to do that.
So the picture has really changed a lot. It used to be that so many people were influenced by these major networks, and now news is spread through so many other sources. So even though we're not getting it from the major networks, people are still getting the message.
Right, and people are finding ways to share it with their friends and family on social media, and they're turning to more conservative news outlets that will tell them what they want to hear.
The Media Research Council, some good research with Katie Yoder. Thanks so much for joining us, and we hope you'll be back.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Well, as kids go back to school, pro football kicks off another season. Faith and football scored big for some of those kids right here in D.C. last weekend. For that story, we're going to hand off to Mark Irons.
Dental exams and a dancing gator at FedEx Field, home to the Washington Redskins, plus a whole lot more.
No football stars out today on the Redskins field, but inside the stadium, you'll find the Pope.
Well, a cardboard cutout, but he's still getting attention.
That scared me the first time I saw it. Like, is that the Pope?
Catholic Charities teamed up with the Washington Redskins for the first annual Back to School Fair.
We're dealing with families, and in particular children, who are in need. The irony is, you and I take for granted what these kids need for school. You know, I wouldn't have thought of haircuts or dental assistance.
The goal is to see that these kids are completely prepared for class. 5th grader Anaya has a goal of her own.
To be more organized. That's something that I have never done. In 4th grade, I had things all over the place.
A problem now solved with a new pencil pouch to drop in a new backpack. A 2-time Super Bowl champion is manning that station.
It makes me feel great because I was one of these kids. I would have never made it with other people helping out in other programs, giving me opportunity. Life is short, give something back.
And kids, remember this.
School is fun. Don't be bored about school.
So let the classes begin. Mark Irons, EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you, Mark. Good to see Clarence Vaughn and so many good people out there helping out. Until tomorrow, we encourage you to like us on Facebook. You can follow us on Twitter. You can watch again on EWTN's YouTube page, and we encourage you to download the EWTN app from EWTN.com. That way, you can take us with you wherever you go. For our EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Brian Patrick. Good night. God bless you.